I'm glad Mr. Carney raised this.
Yep.
Because here's the reason why. This same group, if you go to the website, after they met him, they wrote a laudatory thing about how great Mark Carney is, how great he is and going to improve Chinese-Canadian relations. What did we find out on Monday? The site committee, which looks into federal election interference, said that WeChat and China has been trying to mold public opinion involving Mr. Carney. What are they molding? Nice things about him. What a tough guy he is, how he can take on the Americans.
Yesterday, the internet exploded with the story dropped by the Globe and Mail that Mark Carney met with a proxy organization for the People's Republic of China. In addition to that, he appointed candidate Peter Ewan in Markham Unionville to replace Paul Chang, who had even deeper connections to that organization and others connected to China. Mark Carney flat out denied the meeting ever took place, claiming he had never heard of this organization. Yet his party issued a statement and the original article was subsequently taken down. Well, the Globe and Mail hit back at Carney last night as they were not going to take this retort lying down.
Let's take a look.
Today on the campaign trail, Liberal leader Mark Carney faced some scrutiny over photos taken of him with members of the leadership of a pro-Beijing lobby group. This is a photo that was posted to the Jiangsu Commerce Council of Canada's website. That is Mark Carney with the president of that organization. There were several others posted from the same event. Now, the Globe and Mail first reported about these photos this morning, and later at his press conference today, Mark Carney was asked about them. Here was his response.
You can't believe everything you read in the Globe and Mail. So in your question, and I guess in the article in question, you said I had a meeting with whatever your term was, Beijing group. I've never heard of this group, okay? Never heard of this group. Certainly didn't have a set-up meeting with this group. Full stop. So check your sources before you write things like that, okay? Or your colleagues do. I'm a politician. I go to events where there are hundreds and thousands over the course of a day of different people there. That is not a meeting. If somebody happens to be in the room, takes a picture with me, that's not a meeting.
Okay, I want to bring in our panel of veteran journalists, as we've been doing every Thursday during this campaign. Robert Fife, oddly enough, he is the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. He happens to be here, along with Mia Rabson, the Deputy Parliamentary Bureau Chief of the Canadian Press, and Joël Denis Bellevance, the Parliamentary Bureau Chief for La Presse. Okay, Bob, I do want to talk to you about the story you wrote with Stephen Chase. You saw the Carney comments there. Before we get to that, I do want to show a statement from the Liberal Party about the photos. This is what they put out. It repeats a lot of what Mr. Carney said, that he attends multiple events where he meets and is photographed with hundreds or thousands of people over the course of the day. That's the case here, too, as no specific meeting with that organization has ever been organized or taken. The web post referenced in the Globe and Mail is inaccurate. So is the suggestion that Mr. Carney had any such in-depth discussion. We have reached out to the organization correcting the record and asked that they remove such claims immediately.
Okay, so CBC was very quick to post this last night in defense of Mark Carney, which was very interesting. This was despite the fact that one of the authors of the article, Stephen Chase, had posted on X a screenshot of one of the pictures in question. Now, you know, when we first saw this video of Mark Carney at the press conference, and then we saw this exchange between him and the Globe and Mail reporter, we thought, what are they talking about? So we then went and found the Globe and Mail article, read that, and then we looked up this organization that they were talking about in there, and then, ta-da, we found their website. So this is where we saw the actual photo from Stephen Chase initially posted on that article on their website. And after all of this blew up yesterday, obviously Mark Carney wasn't too happy that he was being questioned about China yet again. And then this article was taken down. But as many have pointed out, the internet is forever, and there's this lovely website called the Wayback Machine when you can, actually find these things. So this is funny that essentially CBC was, all hot to trot on helping push back on this narrative by the Globe and Mail and the internet yesterday by posting that, because that was last night, folks, and it was posted even before this interview with Bob Fife. But this is not going to be the end of this interview with Bob Fife, because it hasn't even started yet.
So, Bob, you're here. You're at the center of this. What's your reaction to what Carney said today in the statement from the party?
Well, first of all, we never said that there was a meeting. We said that this organization met him, and according to their website, they had an in-depth discussion. Mm-hmm. That's the story. And which, by the way, that wasn't the focus of the story. The focus of the story is on the Liberal candidate in the riding that was replaced by another Liberal
Etobicoke
MP.
North,
I know it's
Union Market.
Markham
Union.
Yeah, sorry. My apologies.
And this man named Peter Yen is a former deputy police chief. We checked him out, and he is being connected to Beijing-friendly organizations, including this organization who met with Mr. Carney.
Then that's the JCCC that they're talking about.
Correct. And interesting that CBC can't even recall what the writing is that this is all happening in, because they haven't really touched it. And that's the egregious part about this whole thing, is that Paul Chang, was advocating that someone be kidnapped and then taken for a bounty, and then that guy is replaced by another guy who's even more connected with pro-Beijing organizations. This is what we're dealing with, folks. And as Bob says, that's the story. That's the real story here. Now, they just happened to mention in that article that Mark Carney had met with that same organization. That's all that they really said. Now, the Globe and Mail reporter was just interested because they'd found that obviously on the website, and that's where the Globe ended up getting that story. So that's where they asked him, so why would you meet with this pro-Beijing organization? Why would you do that, Mr. Carney? And he says, that's false. Don't believe everything you meet in the Globe and Mail. And I haven't even heard of these people. Well, as Brian Lilly had said on an earlier post today, you don't meet and take pictures with an entire executive team of an organization that you have no idea who they are. If you do, then that should disqualify Mark Carney from being a candidate for the Prime Minister of Canada, because that means he is so incompetent that he doesn't even know that he's meeting with an entire executive team of a organization that acts as a proxy for Beijing to potentially commit foreign interference in Canada.
Well, it's careless. I mean, you have Mark Carney taking a photo with the entire executive team of the JCCC, and they're trying to explain this away. Now, if you recall, I think it was last summer, possibly even the summer before 2023, where Pierre Poilievre had taken a photo with just a regular citizen who was wearing a shirt, I think it said Straight Pride, and the mainstream media was howling about it.
All over him.
Right.
And here we have, this is not just some guy coming up to Mark Carney. What, you think the entire executive team of this organization was just waiting at a rally and just decided to walk up to Mark Carney? Clear out the rest of the room, by the way, because there was nobody in that room, so they ushered everybody out.
Yeah, there's nobody in the background of that photo.
and then they said, okay, now we can take a picture with Mr. Carney. Even if that happened, people, there would be some questions asked, right?
Well, the whole situation seems a little far-fetched, the way that Mark Carney and the Liberals want us to believe it.
Right. And I love that Bob Fife is immediately coming on CBC and saying, this isn't how this went down.
They echo and repeat the lines of the Chinese Communist Party. The other groups that Mr. Yen met with were the Chinese Freemasons, which talks about annexation of Taiwan. He's been celebrated and had many meetings with the Chinese consulate, which we now know from the public inquiry into foreign interference that the Chinese consulate is the key organizing body for all of these proxy groups that try to influence politicians. So that was the point of our story. But here's the thing I want to talk, and I'm glad Mr. Carney raised this.
Yep.
Because here's the reason why. This same group, if you go to the website, after they met him, they wrote a laudatory thing about how great Mark Carney is, how great he is and going to improve Chinese-Canadian relations. What did we find out on Monday? The site committee, which looks into federal election interference, said that WeChat and China has been trying to mold public opinion involving Mr. Carney. What are they molding? Nice things about him, what a tough guy he is, how he can take on the Americans. So I guess the point here is, has anybody learned anything from the foreign interference inquiry or not?
Well, and I think this is exactly what we're seeing.
Yeah.
That public perception of Mark Carney is not matching the reality.
Well, and this is all playing out in real time, folks. It's literally playing out in real time, where you have China blatantly, during the Liberal campaign, running a smear campaign against Chrystia Freeland. That was reported on for maybe a day, if that, and then it disappeared in the media because they needed more time to focus on how great of a guy Mark Carney was. And then you have them coming out in a pro campaign against Mark Carney, despite the fact that just about every single mainstream media out there had the headline that he's been targeted. Well, targeted implies a negative connotation, but all they were doing was essentially posting positive things. And when even the site committee was called on the fact that they were saying, well, it was positive and negative, ironically by the Globe and Mail, on their remarks that there was positive and negative comments made within this propaganda, they didn't really have much to say, and they just kind of pivoted and said, well, we can't really comment on the intent of these campaigns. And the reporter from the Globe and Mail had said, well, I haven't found anything negative in this. So it's, again, there's all of this spin that's happening, which it's really ticking off Canadians, because we're expecting to understand just the facts and what the truth is here. And we're not getting that. We're having to sift through and read between the lines and all of this other garbage in order to understand what is and what is not going on in this election. But, the media was certainly happy to talk about this alleged Indian interference into Pierre Poilievre's campaign.
Leadership campaign back in 2022.
Yeah.
Not the current one.
That was proven, ironically, in the government's own Hogue Commission, that
nobody had any idea that it was going on.
Yeah, and that it didn't have any impact on the actual race itself. But here you have Mark Carney meeting with these organizations in the middle of his Liberal leadership campaign, which is what he was questioned on. And now, shortly after that, you have the Beijing and Chinese government running propaganda campaigns for the diaspora community in Canada to try and influence opinion in favor of Mark Carney. And this is only a couple of months after he spent the fall meeting with the president of China, the president of the Bank of China, and the mayor of Beijing. Come on, folks. Come on. This is a joke, and our media really needs to start pulling up their socks. I applaud the Globe and Mail for sticking with this story and standing by it, because what they're saying is, no, this is crap. This is true. This happened, and you can't just explain this away, and we're not going to let you do that.